let's reconvene. All right. We have the topic that we had a lot of residents discuss before us a little while ago. Traffic circle is CFI proposal discussion. We know there are public meetings that are being held in July for the purpose of getting input to hear what the citizens say. But obviously, this is a chance for us to have our own comments and have our own discussion. I think we'll probably have future discussions. But given that the NCDOT has already set up meetings, it seems like an appropriate time to do this. Is there anything, I saw something on the screen earlier, is there anything that we should have to review or look at that we haven't seen before? What was up there looked familiar, but someone wants to.
Yeah, I have two thoughts, Pat. One, and this is more for the benefit of the hundreds of people who were here but aren't anymore, but presumably may look at the recording of this, or people who are listening to it live. You or Jeff, because you were on the council at the time that the letter in January was written, perhaps recap some of the alternatives that the council had already proposed to DOT that have not been acted on yet.
I'm prepared to.
That's more for the public to understand.
I'm prepared to address that. Go ahead.
I was going to say, we have the presentation that Division 8 Director Ruben Blakely gave at the Sandhills MPO meeting in May. So if that's helpful, we can share with you now, and we can review some of the slides. It is on the Sandhills website, so any member of the public can go on there, as well as the report that Division 8 did regarding the traffic circle and the dates and times of the meetings for the Pinehurst traffic circle. So all those are on the Sandhills website, and we encourage everyone to go look at that if they want.
Is there anything more recent since then?
No. So
Because
yeah,
that proposal, you couldn't see everything in that proposal. At least I.
Well, I would make two comments. One, that document has a number of appendices which were not included. And those appendices contain data that I would say I would like to see. Secondly, the issue that Pat mentions, and I actually was down at DOT yesterday and found out the one little piece of yellow that no one could explain is, according to the proposal, the shape of the intersection of Dalrymple Road with Midland Road, west of where the proposed connector from Midland to 211 would be. There's a little tiny piece of yellow that was not on the maps, and I asked what that was, and basically it is to make a 90-degree intersection between Midland Road, PGA Boulevard, and Dalrymple. So right now, if you're coming from the traffic circle, Dalrymple goes off at a slight angle. They would move that a little bit to the west, further west, and make it a full 90-degree turn. It was nothing more sinister than that.
Can I ask you, Doug, you said for everyone's benefit, where is the presentation? You said it's on the Sandhill site, but can you be more specific?
Yeah, so if you go to, it's up on the board, but sandhillsmpo.org
Okay.
is the Sandhills Metropolitan
It's
Planning
the
Organization
MPO
website.
governing board.
And then studies and plans.
Now, at the SMPO meeting, they did have a video demonstration on there. Can you see that on the site?
It has a link to it. It has a QR code that you can scan and go to that, yeah.
We put a link on our website to that, so when our constituents want to know
Yeah.
more about it, they can
I
just go
mean,
to our site and pop in there.
Technically, this is part of our website, but yeah, we can make it well-known on our main homepage.
Well, but for a resident who doesn't think to look on the MPO website and looks only on the village website.
Yeah. They're connected, so if you search for it, you'd find it, but we can make it easy to find.
Make it very easy.
Yeah.
No. My age, not yours.
Any other questions for Doug at this point? Or
I just, less for Doug and more for the council.
Go ahead.
I had asked Doug if we could get the origin destination data that DOT has proposed. And he provided that, he copied it. It is these things. They are not easy to print out.
Oh,
They're beautiful. They're beautiful.
What do they tell us?
Well, I'm not 100% sure. I think I understand the numbers. I went down to DOT in Aberdeen yesterday, and the fellow that I was speaking with said, "I've never seen this before." And he couldn't explain it. Doug connected me with Allison Klutz, and unfortunately, she and I were not able to connect today and discuss them. So before spending a lot more time on it, I would like to be sure that what I think I understand, I really do understand. But you all have this information, and it has both present morning and afternoon peak information, as well as projections to 2029 and 2050. And to the extent that our conversation continues beyond this, to be continued at another day.
Okay. I'd be interested in what more you learn. Okay. I'm sure probably all my colleagues would too, but I mean, just to me, it's new information.
I think, again, what was reiterated to me, and I'm saying this more for the benefit of people who were here before, who may be listening, this is the current soft pillow CFI, at least as was expressed to me by the representative of DOT, is not a final version. It is their best answer to the problem they were given. They don't do the population forecast. They do some other modeling given that population forecast. And they don't typically provide people with a menu. They have traffic engineers. They're asked to solve a problem. This is, in their opinion, the best solution. But he reiterated what you've seen in print many places, which is that public input will be considered. I think we obviously heard a pretty strong message tonight as a council. And I think there are other things that can at least be discussed with them as alternatives to this, which are not just say no, and which are ways to improve the traffic flow.
Okay. All right. Having said that, I will kick off this discussion because I've been giving quite a lot of thought about it. Obviously, it is a very important topic to many of our residents. I think this latest proposal from the North Carolina Department of Transportation, known as the shifted pillow, is both disappointing and unacceptable in its present form. We can do better. I have been very involved in this issue since I arrived on the council in January of 2022. We must all work together to improve the traffic circle, not destroy it. The Pinehurst traffic circle, first of all, is part of our historic landmark status. It's a tradition known to all first-time visitors to Pinehurst, and it served as an iconic gateway to our village. It is just not another intersection in another town, in another community somewhere in our state. The shifted pillow, among its various components, would impose 3 seriously harmful effects on the residents of Pinehurst. One, it would remove all 6 acres of longleaf pine trees and replace them with a rectangle of concrete turn signals and traffic lights. There will be no circle. It would authorize the state of North Carolina to acquire several homes and homeowners' property through the use of eminent domain. These are our friends and neighbors, not strangers, who would be subject to eminent domain. It would cut off Midland Road from direct access to the circle, because there would be no circle, and permanently disrupt the majestic drive for the tens of thousands of visitors that arrive in Pinehurst each year. The proposal to uproot our almost 65-year-old circle obviously was designed in Raleigh, not in Pinehurst. This topic calls for a little bit of history, but rather than go back 20 years, which contains many previous NCDOT proposals, let's go back just the last 2 years. In June of 2022, in this very room, the NCDOT appeared before the Village of Pinehurst Council and unveiled a proposal called CFI, Continuous Flow Intersection. By the way, there is only one CFI in the entire state of North Carolina. That is in Charlotte, someone who was referenced today by a couple of the speakers. At that time, one member of the council described it like a, quote, knife in her heart upon seeing all the concrete and traffic lights. Another member asked, quote, why do we want to have an enormous highway going right through the center of our village? At the time, I commented, according to the NCDOT proposal, to borrow a phrase, in order to save the traffic circle, we've got to destroy it. After considerable research and discussion, and this relates a little to what you mentioned, John, in January 2023, the Village of Pinehurst sent a letter to NCDOT indicating, quote, a majority of the council is not able to support either of the options currently being considered for updating the traffic circle intersection. They are too impactful in a negative way to the special character of our village and the integrity of our National Historic Landmark. But the letter sent by the Village of Pinehurst, rather than just saying no, went on to make 9 recommendations. In January 2024, just about 6 months ago, the NCDOT adopted 2 of the 9 recommendations that we sent to them in writing. One was installing barriers to prevent vehicles from crossing over lanes. Those are the bollards you now see in the circle, which have been, I think, well received. We heard some compliments tonight, and we are obviously going to wait for some data to see if any impact there's been. But nevertheless, I believe they've had an impact. And then adding better overhead signage approaching the circle. You've seen the addition of the words only on a few signs so that drivers who are not familiar with what lane they might be in can make sure they get in the right lane earlier so they don't have that temptation to lane hop. The remaining suggestions include such items as reducing the speed limit, installing rumble strips, and increased enforcement of speed limits. A couple of months later, after those improvements were made, voila, the shifted pillow landed on the Pinehurst mattress. The NCDOT is not infallible. The shifted pillow is just a proposal, as my colleague mentioned, and NCDOT is seeking citizen input at 3 public meetings in July. According to one of the key engineers working on this proposal, quote, we wanted to make sure we get input because it's a big deal. It's a big change. And the circle is a historic, iconic kind of landmark for a lot of folks. We want to make sure we can get all of the input we can to make the right decision. Well, my fellow residents, it is our job to make sure they make the right decision. Do not be shy in expressing your opinions to members of this council and your elected representatives in Raleigh. Based on what I heard earlier, I think Pinehurst residents tend not to be shy on certain topics, this being one of them. Just as a reminder, and someone mentioned this earlier, just as a reminder, about 15 years ago, the NCDOT had a proposal to build a US 1 bypass through the middle of horse country in Southern Pines. Created quite a stir. They ended up withdrawing it in the face of strong public opposition. And if you go back 50 years, talk to some old-timers, the NCDOT once proposed, believe it or not, cutting down all the trees in the middle of Midland Road between the circle and Southern Pines. Once again, strong public opposition prompted NCDOT to change their mind. That is why citizen input is so important. Let me close by pointing out that the Village of Pinehurst gets no mulligan if we make a mistake when it comes to the traffic circle. There is no do-over once those trees come down and homes are snatched by eminent domain. So let's work together to improve the circle, not allow it to be destroyed. Thank you. And I'll now ask the Mayor Pro Tem if he has any remarks he'd like to make, and we will follow that by other members of the council who may like to comment.
Thank you, Pat. I think I'd like to follow up a little bit on on the presentation that was made by Mr. Geddes in the public session. Not to reiterate his numbers, although they do point out something interesting, which is, first of all, these numbers from 2010 census. We have the 2020 census. We have updated census beyond that. There are some of the numbers in the DOT's presentation itself which can at least be called into question. One has to do with the accident data, and they cite 840 accidents, of which 723, whatever the exact number is, are property damage only. And that was for the 5-year period ended December of last year. It doesn't include post-installation of the bollards. I can't imagine we're going to have more accidents. I don't know how many less we're going to have, but I think there will be less. But if you look at the year by year, in calendar 23, the total number of accidents of all kinds, property damage only, was 79. And if you multiply that by 5, you get a little under 400. That compares very favorably to the 450 in the 2 previous 5-year periods, not the 850. Now, one thing I learned a long time ago, they say the figures never lie, but liars always figure. You can make numbers say whatever you want. But it at least is a reason to question whether safety is really behind this. I mentioned the information here, which I don't think I quite understand, or I'm not sure I understand yet. I think I do. It has also been mentioned by representatives of DOT in the SMPO meetings that the traffic is not, as we would all guess, evenly distributed around the 5 legs. The bulk of it is either on 211 or 15501 south of the traffic circle. I was trying to derive what percentage there is of that from these numbers. I can't do that yet because, as I say, I don't fully understand them, but I think I'm close. They even have some tables for the future projections, which I think will give those numbers. Interestingly, they don't give them for the current morning and afternoon peak times. So I think that beyond the 7 of the 9 recommendations that a past council made to DOT, there's room to explore other things. I don't exactly know, beyond these meetings coming up in July, what form that will take here at the council. I think we have to hear that. We have to hear what the DOT says and what reaction they give us after those and after they hear directly from the public. But I think it is certainly possible for us to come up with an alternative. And I think I'd probably like to speak directly to the issue on Dalrymple. It's more than just the severing of the one leg and turning Midland Road up to 211. And you can say, well, gee, it's only one house or it's 2. Well, it isn't really 1 or 2 houses, because if you look at 211 itself will be widened. It has to be in order to accommodate the number of lanes into a CFI, which is going to be either 6 or 7, I believe, on all of the lanes. And the right-of-way that DOT has on either side of that is going to impact a number of the homes beyond just the one right on the corner of Dalrymple. It's going to go into people's swimming pools or their backyards or what have you, up and down that street. So I think I'll just stop there and say that I think we can come up with ways to improve throughput without doing this.
Before we go on, I wanted to pass out to colleagues that January 2023 letter, because it does list, you prompted me that there were 9 circulations we listed, but we also listed 7 data issues, and then we listed 4 collaboration issues that we thought we could work on with NCDOT. And I'm going to ask Shannon or Doug if we can post this on our website sometime this week, whatever's convenient. But I think this letter indicated to me the desire that the council had over a year ago to try to find some ways to improve the situation. And I was delighted when they took us up on those 2 proposals. Those lane dividers and that signage were ideas that came in this room in January 2023 that we then sent to them. And to my, I still remember when the village manager reported to us that he'd been contacted by the folks at DOT, and they said they could work with us with a few of these things. I will admit, I was surprised, and then lo and behold, they got to it. Let me turn to Dr. Morgan, if he has something he'd like to say.
I think that NCODT's got a lot of questions to answer, and I highly encourage the constituents of Pinehurst to make sure they show up at these different meetings. You got the different ones that are on the screen there of July 16th, July 18th, July 23rd, and I would certainly encourage folks to make sure that they're there to be able to let their voices be heard. I know there's another meeting there for elected officials that's on July 16th, 3 to 4. I will certainly be there at that one. And listening to what NCDOT is proposing and be able to ask some questions at that point in time for any other things that we've been brought up here. So I would imagine that NCDOT wants to have the populace be happy about what they're doing. I think that we need to make sure that we do our best to have a working relationship with them and to be able to come up with other solutions. There's two things that have to happen for the traffic circle or any changes to that. And it's number one, they got to move traffic, and there are projections of increase, and I think there is going to be some increases. How much, we can certainly argue that. The other thing is we want a pretty entrance into our village, and so we don't want that to change. So I would encourage folks to make sure their voices are heard, and that we are asking NCDOT what's going on. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Barbara Fickman?
Thank you. I am opposed to the continuous flow proposal by DOT for a couple of reasons, some observations. I'm curious to know how an intersection controlled at its core by a, quote, two-phase traffic signal with additional half signals upstream from the main signal, end quote, could be considered continuous flow. Secondly, I seriously question the viability of the underlying population projections, as we have seen earlier, on which this decision was predicated, and that actually challenges the need for this proposal at the very beginning. Certainly the magnitude of this proposal is in question without the population data to support it. I think the implementation of this proposal would be confusing, and that's even admitted in their materials, destructive, invasive, unsightly, expensive, and utterly devastating to the historic Midland Road gateway to Pinehurst. Traffic circles are used successfully throughout the world, and they enable continuous flow. Recent improvements to our traffic circle appear to have had a positive impact, and our next steps should be to implement additional common sense options such as the ones we have suggested and determine the impact of those changes. Finally, the underlying traffic data, population growth assumptions need to be revisited before considering any drastic conventional, unconventional, or unwarranted design. And I have one other observation. It is interesting to me that all of our planning is being done on past data, but who is looking at the future? And we know that technology is having a tremendous impact on any number of different industries, one of which is transportation. So we're all aware that we got self-driving cars out there, and nobody in their right mind will get in one. But but there are people who drive who I wouldn't get in anyway. That's neither here nor there. But what's in the future? And think about what we're driving today. Many cars, especially the newer ones, have all kinds of sensors on them. So how many rear-end collisions are we going to be looking at in the future, realistically? So we are designing something based on questionable population data from the past and no information that I could see in anything in their proposal that takes a look at the impact of technology in the future. And that should be a component piece. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Farrell.
Thank you, Pat. I'm sure that I'll be echoing much has already been said, and probably not as eloquently, but I just made some notes to myself on some items, not in any particular order. The first thing is that this proposal seems like incredible overkill for this area. We're not an urban area. I mean, we are not Charlotte or Raleigh. And I don't think you can underestimate the value of certain features of an area that define an area. And this circle helps define this area to a great extent. And to destroy it would be to destroy a fixture of the community and something that people actually would quote when they say, "Tell me about Pinehurst." So I think that's an important issue. The design that I've seen is designed for peak hours. Well, I mean, I've been in the peak hour traffic, and yes, you might have to wait for 5 or 6 minutes, and I've timed it almost every time I've stopped, and I don't think I've ever gone over 7.5 minutes waiting to go through that intersection, even when it's backed up considerable distance. So it's designed for peak hours, and yet almost the rest of the 20 hours a day, it doesn't seem to be barely slowed down, to tell you the truth. So I find that designing for a peak hour when you're ignoring the other 20 hours of the day when vehicles are going through seems a little silly, in my opinion. I think the improvement in traffic times that I've seen in the data that they've supplied, and I went through trying to understand the data that they have, seems marginal at best. You know, comparing, I mean, the worst example is if we do nothing, you'll be delayed for 12 minutes compared to, you know, maybe you have 5 minutes now or 3 minutes or so forth. But I compare that to the wait time that I see people waiting in Starbucks line for the coffee, or during the midday at Chick-fil-A. I mean, they're waiting for 15, 20 minutes to get their sandwich, and I wonder why they can't wait for, you know, 6 minutes at the circle. Anyway, so I believe that we really haven't seen a whole lot of effort relative to what you just mentioned, Pat, as far as examples or things we recommended they might do as far as implementing any of those other items to help calm the traffic and or improve the circle. So I'd look to those items to be addressed before we turn the whole world upside down. Just as an observation, and you've seen this in many cities where major roadways or major improvements divide neighborhoods, divide cities, divide communities, divide the towns. And I'd hate to see a large, complex, concrete structures further divide this community into, you know, north, south, east, west, or whatever. Where do you live? I live north of the CFI. You live south of the CFI. I mean, because we can't get to meet each other, you know. So yes, the circle's a little awkward now, but at least we can get through to see each other. So I think something like this would divide the community significantly, to tell you the truth. The other major item I'm concerned with is that the safety issue. I mean, the reality is, in each one of those legs coming into the circle, there would be 3 traffic lights. So a total of probably 12 traffic signals. And each one of them gives the opportunity for an accident that it's not going to be a rear ender. It's going to be a significant potential injury to some people. I looked at the YouTubes online about the CFI, and I found at least 3, there's maybe 4. There's two YouTubes about the Charlotte intersection. One is created by one of the designers, and he flows clearly through the intersection. It's unbelievable how well he does. But the other one is from a local, apparently, who just took the camera in his car and showed he was doing a shifted left turn. He stopped at the first traffic light, and then the traffic light turned green. the shifted left turn part. He started to go around that, and the car coming the other way ran the red light and almost broadsided him. So I'm thinking to myself, we now are going to have 12 intersections. Each one, when you move through that intersection, is the opportunity for a significant accident. So I think there's a significant safety issue. We're not just talking about small fender benders, we're talking about significant damage to industry and to people in these type of intersections. So I think that anyone who's gone up to Morganton and 15501, if you look at that intersection, you see people don't always stop at that traffic light. They blast through. Well, you've got 12 more opportunities for that to happen. So I think that's a significant issue, the safety issue. I'd rather see people wait 5 minutes in line rather than get broadsided and injury or death. So those are some of my concerns. I think it's ill-advised at this point in time, and I agree with the other comments made by the council members. Thank you.
Parenthetically, Jack, with regard to 15501 in Morganton, there's already a stip to change that from an intersection to an interchange, even though they just finished redoing it, what, 6
Right.
months ago, so. So much for long-term solutions.
Right.
Well, and along those lines, the plan that they're proposing is not to begin until 2030 as far as construction. And so it wouldn't be finished to 2032 or 3. So there isn't sort of the sense of urgency. I understand and I do think they're wise to do these things between opens. I get that. But there just seems to be, there's a lot of other projects that I wish they would undertake between the opens that would also, I think, have a positive impact on our residents and the ones in the general area. One thing we haven't mentioned, and eventually will get mentioned, is that the other side of the circle, that sort of sliver of Pinehurst, there's a neighborhood there called Taylorhurst. I don't know how many, if we ever have a Trivial Pursuit question, Jack, you'll probably know this one. But Taylorhurst is the 41 homes that are in Pinehurst, outside the gates of number 9, the entrance to number 9. As you all know, as you go into number 9, you are in Southern Pines. If you're outside the gates, you're in Pinehurst. And one of the questions I'll have for the traffic engineers and so forth is I am curious about the motor vehicle count that comes in and out of the Beaver Lane opening there when you come off the circle, because whatever the count is, that those numbers will move to in front of the gate for number 9. They ought to be aware of it. We ought to be aware of it. And I would think the residents of number 9 probably want to be aware of it. But I do have a few questions for when we meet with them again. And the suggestions that were made over a year ago, there's some of those that I think are still viable and can be discussed. And some of them I think would make a difference if taken collectively. This is going to play out. Our citizens are they're engaged and probably get much more engaged. And I think we all have a little more research to do. And because I know every time I hear someone else talk about the topic, I learn something I didn't know before. And I think I studied this a lot. But, when you talked about that, the data there and all that, I didn't factor in. Barb's comment about technology, I can be honest with you, I did not think that far forward about, but you're right. My car now, before I back up, I look at the camera, okay, down my dashboard. I grew up with my neck disjointed to trying to figure out if I could back up. And now I can just sit there like this and determine it. For the new generation, fine. I'm sure that's fine for them, but for me.
And you mentioned that they're not actually going to begin construction until after the 2029 open. The other interesting corollary they're talking about data is by that point in time, we actually will have some additional data that will speak to whether the Office of Management Budget population forecast increase will be accurate, because part of what they're assuming is a higher rate of growth now to 2030. And maybe that will occur, and then we'll think that they're spot on, or maybe it will begin to revert back to the longer-term average, and that will cause you to question the basis on which this whole increase in traffic is
Well,
built.
going to the construction start point, I know we need to make a distinction between when they start construction and when they start exercising eminent domain authority. Because that, to me, first of all, that is a brand-new thing that was dropped on us. That did not exist when we had the proposal for CFI June of 2022, because if it did, I missed the wording, okay? And I don't remember anyone else mentioning it. But that's, to me, is a very big game changer, that in the Midland Road, because these are, I mentioned, these are our friends, our neighbors, and those people in those houses, they spend a lot of money to buy those houses, relocate here, and I'm sure the last thing on their mind is that they were going to put a road. One person told me they're going to put a road. His house will be all right, but his swimming pool is going to be removed. But anyway, those are things that we'll have to deal
Well,
with.
Pat, you mentioned in June of '22, there was a meeting with DOT, came
Here.
and met with council.
Yeah, they made a presentation, the first CFI presentation. And it was, I will tell you this at the time, it was a very professional presentation. I mean, it was like the Pentagon, one of these Pentagon presentations, dogs and whistles and no pointers. They were, and, but it just fell flat. Because of the extreme visual view of what was going to happen to something that has been there for 60-something years that everybody drives around. And then that.
My point is, should we perhaps request another meeting with them after they do their public listening sessions somewhere September, October?
Well, there is a meeting with elected officials prior to the first meeting on July 16th. And so we'll have some interchange there, but I would support, we ask for another meeting. And perhaps after these meetings, they're going to come back with something different. I mean, they're engineers, you know? So.
Yeah, we've seen at least 6 to 8 different proposals over the last many years how to solve it.
I think it's about 18.
Yeah, 18.
17,
I've heard
18.
that.
Or more,
I
yeah.
saw that number.
I know.
Doctor.
I didn't want to say a dozen, but there's been close to 10. I've seen 10 different
The one I
ways.
saw that was fascinating was it was in the June 2018 pilot, and it was a picture of the circle. The circle was intact, and they added 4 mini circles,
Oh, yeah.
and it looked kind of nice on the picture, but I guess it was like you were going to get dizzy after you get you miss
That
your
was-
turn.
At the time, that was their preferred
That was their
option.
proposal.
And
What happened? Is it just
Well, that's the
since
Swindon.
then, they've gotten updated projections on population changes, and
Population.
time has, you know,
okay?
so increased numbers in accordance with their population's projections suggested it wasn't going to work anymore.
That's the
So-
Swindon roundabout in London that actually has 7 roads coming into
Yeah.
it, and they've got all kinds of, but it works. I mean, it's,
But, you know, kind of hindsight's 2020, now that doesn't look so bad. That was their preferred option, and we told them no.
Well, I understand, because when I saw it, I thought it did look much more visually pleasing than what we were seeing up here. And there was no mention of eminent domain. There was no. So anyway, okay, I think we look forward to the July 16, 18, and 23 meetings. And then I think after that, we probably want to regroup as a council and talk some more about what we may or may not do after that in a formal way.
Just for my colleagues on the council, if you haven't read the email, they did request that you respond back if you're going to attend the June 16 meeting.
Yes, thank you.
So I'd encourage you to do that.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Morgan. Okay,
One
go
other-
ahead,
Just
Barbara.
one other comment, and that is, our residents were kind enough to put together a resolution, and I would just like to, at some point in time, give this resolution formal consideration from the council.
Yeah, I think we ought to address a resolution after these meetings, but I didn't get a chance to read it, but I did appreciate them doing that too. They're focused. Okay. Item 3, post 2024 US Open discussion. I assume that's you, Doug? And again, I think some of us mentioned it earlier. That was a quick timing, and I thought a very good session you had right in this room with, I don't know, must have been 24 folks there.
Yeah, we had a good representation of some restaurants, some retail, some property owners, so it was good. So I have a few slides I'll go through. So like you mentioned, we had the business community debriefing with them. We had an after-action meeting with the Parks and Rec senior staff today.
How did that go? Anything you can share that was interesting?
Well, I'll
Oh, you'll
cover
get
it in the
to it.
next few slides. So,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
and then we have our meeting tonight. So if there's feedback you want to give me as well, the senior staff is meeting tomorrow to have feedback and have our report. And then we will be meeting with USGA in the future. They're still busy doing a couple of other US Opens for, yeah. But we'll get them by the end of the summer. So a few things that came up. So parking, the USGA provided lots and shuttles seemed to work very well. I think most everyone has said traffic was actually better that week than most other weeks. Yeah. So maybe that's just what we do every day then. But anyway, the lot at 55 Rattlesnake I thought was very helpful. It helped alleviate some of the pressure from the downtown. So that made downtown fairly reasonable. I drove down there a lot, and I was able to find a parking spot pretty much every time I was there. I had to circle around maybe once, but I don't think parking was a deterrent for patrons visiting our downtown businesses. So I think they were successful, and that helped. We did get a little feedback on what was more important, providing parking for our employees or patrons. So we'll figure that out for the next one. Maybe we limit the main Village Green lot to employees, or maybe only to patrons and make employees park somewhere else. That's something we can consider then.
The Rattlesnake parking, did it end up being almost all patrons and not employees, or could you tell?
It was a lot of employees.
It was? Okay.
Yeah. And so they would get there like right at 8 and need to get into their jobs. But there was definitely patrons too, so it wasn't all one or the other. I thought our roping worked very well. There was a couple of areas that, like, midway through the week, like, oh, let's rope this off, and that helped too. So we're able to adapt, was helpful. Some things that would be helpful for next time: clearer explanation of road closures. So on some of our materials, it said, no parking and road closures, and so some people got confused, like, what? This road's being closed? I was like, no, it's just no parking on that road. So if
Many roads closed, though, were there really?
They're not.
Dogwood, right? Mostly Dogwood.
Yeah, Dogwood for the events downtown, and then Morganton was the only real road. I mean, there was like Muster Branch, but only like 3 people live on it. Yeah, it doesn't really count.
The
So,
3 houses there,
yeah,
yeah, right.
I would add just a couple of thoughts here. One, the downside to better publicizing the fact that parking was almost always available is all of a sudden everybody comes down and then you don't have it.
Yeah.
The only negative comment I heard from residents who didn't live close enough to walk downtown was, is there a way to create parking for them?
Yeah.
Not so, it shouldn't probably be downtown, because these are people who say, I want to go to the golf course for 6 or 8 hours. But if I live at Lake Pinehurst, why do I have to go to one of the remote lots, which is farther away than I already live?
Let me comment on that. I think if more people were aware that the Rattlesnake Trail lot was there, and also just how close it is.
Yeah, it is close.
I agree with that.
I think that would, cut that out a little bit, because there were some people, when you would tell them Rattlesnake Trail Park, say, where's that? And it's right around the corner from Maxie's was my best explanation.
Was West Pinehurst Park used at all by the USGA?
It wasn't.
So that's hypothetically something they do require shuttle service, but as a place that could accommodate a fair number of vehicles that's closer than the remote lots, that could be with a resident passer.
You could comfortably walk from the Rattlesnake Trail lot to Maxie's, Pinehurst Pizza, the Tater Barn, and Pinehurst Brewery. I mean, those things are very, very close.
Yeah, they're across the street. It's a half a mile to downtown, and that's not even a far walk. Yeah.
You can do that, but anyway, that's my only comment about that.
And
I-
just one other question, how many parking tickets did we write?
I'd have to count. It was
Ballpark.
significant.
Fair number.
Well, let
40,
us know.
say 45.
Fine, okay, and we have no idea how many are
As
gonna get.
of late last week, 2 people had paid their fines.
2, 3, something like that.
I'm
yeah.
gonna leave that out, I don't care how many, I just wonder how many we wrote as opposed to how many we're gonna
Yeah,
collect.
no,
Uh,
we'll have a discussion on that during
They
the
got the
code
gift,
enforcement.
though.
Well, and people were, you definitely see people park in the Village Green lot and then not walk towards downtown, walk towards the course. But most of them came back within the 3 hours-ish, or they got there so early that, they were there for 5 hours, but they were still within the 3-hour time limit of posted time. Anyway, but to John's point, maybe that village or the Greens lot that was basically empty, maybe that's also something that we could coordinate to have parking for locals to get downtown. So
By the way, I would view that overall as a very positive outcome. The positive comments are 20 to 1.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So
Very
but
close.
as a high-performing organization that looks for ways to
Yeah.
improve, that could be something
Little
we could
feedback.
try to figure out for next time.
And there didn't seem to be any shortage of parking for golf carts in
Yeah.
behind the Village Green.
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
I thought that was I would tell people, go behind the Village Green, because they were saying, I looked in all the lots, all the spots were filled downtown. I say, don't go downtown, go in.
yeah, exactly, right. And to that point, a little more and earlier information on golf cart parking. We were kind of waiting for some USGA graphics to put out, but next time we can get that out in front of the people. a little
One
bit.
suggestion, do we have the mailing list for everybody who has a golf cart sticker?
I'm sure we do.
Maybe what
Maybe.
we might do in the future is every one of those people get some
Yeah.
sort of email or
Hey,
notice.
go here, yeah.
Just here's where you can park, because they're the only ones really with golf carts. There's a few people who might rent some, but.
Yeah.
anyway.
Look, I'm not sure we do have that
I-
database. We may, or we may be able to pull it together from other records.
Right.
And the other thing that we talked a lot about as a council was transportation between the course and downtown. And the mayor found the secret workaround. I don't know if I should say that in public, but
I'll out myself here. When you came out Gate 8, okay, in front of the USGA, and they had an ongoing shuttle that would stop, and the shuttle would say, Carolina Hotel, Holly,
Usual resort shuttle.
and I would just walk on, I'd say the Holly, and I get dropped off, which is about, a 5-iron from my house.
Yeah,
and,
your credit's good, not so sure about it.
but it
Full
it solved my
disclosure,
problem.
full disclosure, I also saw the mayor get turned away in his golf cart when he tried to park without a sticker. So they were policing, that was on, not a tournament day, but.
No, that was a non-tournament day.
Yeah.
Yes.
but
Testing the system.
maybe that's something we can look at partnering. I don't know if the resort would be interested in doing something like that, but it's a discussion we can definitely have.
They didn't ask any question.
Yeah.
They just asked, where do you want to get dropped off?
Yeah, I don't want to encourage 30,000 people to do that,
I know,
though,
well,
so, yeah.
I'll probably get a call tomorrow from.
I think it's
Yeah,
5 years,
exactly.
5 years, most people will forget.
Yes, yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Let's see. Okay, so the showcase, our events downtown and the park and nearby, I thought our concerts were very well attended, and we heard from the business people, especially the retail, that that's when their stores got busy, was when all the people came downtown for that. One thing that we learned through the events was that at 10:30, when the concerts were over and they turned off those lights, it got really dark. So, and there are people walking around, and sometimes the roads are closed, sometimes they weren't. But we put one of our light towers and we shined it straight up in the air, so it provided some light, but didn't look like it was like the police yard and people were breaking out of prison. So that worked well. I thought some of our activations in the park were good. I think they all were. The Olympic rings and the drive box, I think everyone had fun with those. We had other events during the day. Our goal was to bring locals down and visitors to try to keep people in downtown all day and not just have people only on the course. So the yoga, the painting, our tours, we got a little bit of feedback like, well, is that really needed? That just took up parking. So that's something we can look at. I do think it,
I heard that from a few people. It's like,
Yeah,
wait a
and-
minute, what's that all about? You know, or a couple of people did come down that I know and said, I'm not sure we needed to do that.
I
you
think it
know?
would be good, Doug, when you're through looking at everything, get some metrics on how many people attended these. Maybe instead of 6 classes of yoga, you have 2. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know, but I just have no idea.
And the important thing to remember for next time is it's going to be 2 full weeks. And so
Yes.
we're not going to do yoga every single day. That would be yoga overkill.
I heard one comment actually this morning, and it was more directed at the USGA in terms of the on-course hydration stations. But might we have wanted to provide something for people who brought their own container?
Yeah, we saw that. We got the email that, why didn't we provide hydration stations downtown rather than selling for $1 a bottle?
Yeah, we talked about that too. It's like, I mean, we didn't make any money. We weren't trying to make money, but yeah, we could get water's fine.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept.
We're in the last, half of 1% of how we make it better here, but
Yeah.
I think that'd be worth considering.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think the welcome tent, besides maybe charging for the water, was a good experience. The upgraded bathrooms, I think, was good. Sometimes when you get the porta-johns after a week, they're not what you want to be visiting. So I think that was good overall. Additional umbrellas for shade would have been nice. There was some redundancy between what we were doing downtown and then what private businesses were doing. And we tried to coordinate that beforehand, and then businesses were doing stuff that they didn't tell us about. Anyway, I think we could potentially coordinate that and not have to have us necessarily provide the concert every night. Maybe it's at a different location.
I got generally positive feedback in line with what we heard Friday morning. Drum and Quill did a very nice job. The wine shop did a very nice job. Dugan's maybe,
Yeah, right, yeah. And we also got feedback that, we couldn't start the concerts until the last putt went in. And we're like, really, would you really have heard it on the course? But we wanted to be sensitive to the USGA's concern, and because they're the ones providing all of this, maybe we should listen to them. But maybe we can have something like non-amplified and just a singer or something for an hour or so. But yeah, a puppet show. Well, sure.
but they're not going to stop the jets flying in and out. I mean, that's
Yeah.
not going to happen.
Or the
That was
church
all the
bells.
time.
All right. Let's see. That's why that. All right, the social district. A lot of positive feedback on this. We gave out about 50,000 stickers. Some areas of improvement here is we used cardboard, garbage cans, and by the end of the week, they got pretty soggy. And then, there are some potential safety concerns with, lots of people walking around and cars, so you have some pedestrian vehicle interactions that can be a concern.
I didn't see much on the police report, though.
No,
I think that
there
came
weren't-
out pretty well.
there weren't any, but it's just a potential. We have had requests that maybe council wants to consider doing it more often, so we can discuss that later. And that's so weird. Some other things that we heard, downtown was clean, very well maintained. I have to give a lot of credit to Buildings and Grounds. They were always out there cleaning. Out there first thing in the morning when it was light, you could actually see everything. They did a great job cleaning it up. The pre-championship merchandise sale parking was a little messy. Having people have to drive into Doral Woods to park on the golf course, potentially we can find a better solution next time for that.
That our call or the USGA?
It was the USGA.
Yeah.
I think they were a little surprised at the demand side. They'll be better prepared.
Yeah, and I don't
if
think
they-
the neighborhood had any idea. And so if they would have known and USGA had known how much demand there would have been, maybe that could have been.
A lot of demand. I was visiting a friend that lives on 16, and the cars were constantly coming by their house, yeah.
Yeah, they told me Thursday morning that they were way ahead on their merchandise sales, so, and it showed, so.
If that 16 and 17 fairway could be accessed through the harness track possibly, rather than going through Doral Woods.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
Off of Morganton's easier, yeah.
Yeah, we just have to, I don't know how much of that is blocked off for their other shuttles and other events, but that is a potential that we could look at. And then I also thought it was a nice touch that the Golf House in the Hall of Fame was free for that week and that everyone could go and visit. That was really nice. So that's,
It's been free anyway to the end of June.
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
But I don't know, in 5 years, will they,
Whether they do that again or not.
in, overall, this was very much a team effort. So Parks and Rec Department did a lot, especially with their showcase downtown, and Public Services did a lot of work leading up and also during the week with the garbage and all those things. And it was certainly a full village effort to make it happen on our end. And I also want to say that the USGA has been an amazing partner. Like, there are things that we didn't always agree on, but they were always reasonable, very easy to get along with, and a great neighbor that I'm happy that we'll be able to work with them for the rest of time, it seems like.
It's their hometown now, so to
Yeah,
speak. So you get,
Yeah.
the lot at the community center seemed like it was mostly empty every time I would drive by. I mean,
Yeah, that is one thing we also discussed. So they, in their formal lease, they have Rassy Wicker, the Cannon Park, including the community center parking lot. And they said they didn't ever use the actual parking lot at the community
Oh,
center.
it was empty all the time that I saw.
Yeah.
Well, not totally empty, but pretty much empty.
Yeah, and yeah, here at Rassy Wicker, I don't know if it filled up late at night, but I never saw a car over there. And so maybe that's something we can work with them and coordinate with, because we did close down Rassy Wicker, like we didn't have the splash pad open, and maybe that's something we don't necessarily have to do. If parking's not that,
Weeks in June.
yeah, it would have been nice, yeah.
Good point. What, do we have a firmer idea when the USGA will be finished with their data and the Moore County will be finished with their data? Is that something we'll look at in September, you think, or?
CVB said they will get June 30 data on August 1st. That was with regard to, I believe, hotel tax.
Okay.
I don't know about the sales tax data, what the lag is for that. 3 months?
Okay,
Yeah, so in the fall, we could
in the fall. we'll have
relook at that.
some real good metrics.
Don't spend it just yet.
No, I like metrics.
we-
and,
We already spent it because we budgeted for it, so. But that's all I have. Any questions or feedback?
Job, really, appreciate it. That's unbelievable.
There's going to be a formal after-action review sitting down with USGA and the club.
There will, yeah.
How long do you think that's going to take?
So we were waiting for them to finish the senior and the adaptive, and then shortly after that, we can meet with.
Yeah, I think it'd be very valuable.
Yeah.
Making sure that their stakeholder
Mhm.
opinions.
There'll be changes we may want to make collectively.
Also, just the communication back and forth enhances the relationship and
Yep.
prepares us for next time, okay? And then other things are happening. So it's really not,
The only thing I did hear from a few people was, for those who used vans and the drop-off, if you know the course fairly well, I mean, it's at the far end of the course, at the tee of number 5.
Yeah,
course.
at PGA Boulevard, that,
Long way to anywhere, and to get all the way back there at the end of the day, if they would have a drop-off area for vans and shuttles, that would be more convenient to another gate that's more central, that would be helpful. Just sort of put that in the.
yeah. So around Marshall Park turned into the de facto version of that, so.
I know,
We
exactly.
had to run them off a little bit because they were blocking the road.
Yeah, but if they would somehow or another figure a drop-off area that wouldn't block the roads
Yep.
and be more convenient to the central area, that would be helpful.
Doug, one last question. How much time is going to be needed to sort of get things back to normal regarding the part where we parked and, sod and the harness track and all that? Is there?
It's all spelled out in their contract, and I don't recall exactly. But it's fairly quick. It's like,
sometime in the next 90 days?
oh, yeah, it's definitely within 90 days. Yeah.
That's fine. I just was curious.
I'm curious to know, did you hear from residents during the week? Any complaints about noise, social district, anything like that?
I didn't hear any, and I communicated a lot with the front desk, and we didn't really get really any complaints about social district or even like rowdy visitors.
think our-
Mostly what they heard was parking.
I think in general, our code compliance complaints were down that week.
Right.
I did not hear any.
Like, I think people were just too busy having fun.
Yeah.
But I not only didn't hear any, as I walk around in the village, as I do all the time, I didn't see beer bottles on somebody's front lawn or anything like that. I thought that it was remarkably clean.
I agree.
Uh,
Hopefully, some same people will come back in '29. yeah.
Somebody said we didn't get any My VOP tickets that week. I don't know if that's true, but it was very low, yeah.
Well, you know, a lot of folks were gone who were living here, and the ones who visited, they wouldn't know my VOP from the Man on the
No.
Moon. So,
All the disgruntled folks left town in the first place, right?
Have a major golf tournament every week.
Right.
But I mean, I actually left first thing Monday morning and was back Wednesday night for dinner. And Wednesday night at the Pinecrest, you could not have imagined that we had the United States Open 72 hours beforehand.
Really, yeah.
You wouldn't have known from the core downtown village, I don't think.
Doug, last thing I have on here is just everything, all the feedback that I've gotten on the open and putting the ear to the ground and hearing different people say different things. Outstanding job.
Yeah,
Okay,
agree.
outstanding job. So I think it's important that we recognize that this doesn't happen just because, hey, we decide we want to do an open. It requires a ton of work, and the work occurred before the people showed up, not necessarily when they were there. I know a lot was done while they were there and we executed the plan, but developing that plan was critical. And I certainly, from my perspective, recognize your role in doing that and the leadership that you provided, and I thank you for that. I would also ask that you identify people on your team that may have really distinguished themselves during the process and make sure we reward them and take care of our people.
Yeah, thanks. And if I can drop a few names, so Angie Wisnett, our new Parks and Recreation Director, has been great, and her team over there with Dave White and Emily Zielinski, they really stepped up, and they had put in a lot of effort, and they had to meet with me a lot, so that, extra bonus for them. And then Eric Steimer, Reg Jones, and Leighton Schwab at the USGA were incredible to work with, so grateful that we get to work with them in the future.
Doug, could you expand, what was it Parks and Rec did that was above and beyond? I'm
So
not
they,
questioning, I just wonder.
Yep. So they did basically everything downtown is what they helped with and were in charge of. So they, all those concerts, all our part-time Parks and Rec people, they did summer camp during the day, and then they had to go down there at night to shuttle traffic around. So they put in a lot of time and effort.
Fantastic.
I think we have concluded the U.S. Open so far. Thanks again, and we'll look forward to other future updates as what's taking place. Okay. Next item before we go to closed session is other business. Jack, we touched earlier on your
Done my other
your
business.
your item. Barb, anything you want to bring up? Dr. Morgan? Okay, I have nothing other than next, our next meeting in July. I think what we heard from Doug earlier is that we will hear from Oakley or Collier at the second meeting in July. But next week, we'll hear the update on analytics. Is there anything else in particular we'll be looking at next meeting?
Code enforcement? Or is that
Yeah,
the
there's some things that you guys identified that we've got on the calendar for
23rd.
future meetings.
Okay. All right, I'm fine. I'll entertain a motion to go to a closed session.
I move to adjourn the regular, excuse me. Move to adjourn the closed session, and I'm screwing that up too. Got glasses on here. I move to recess the work session, enter into a closed session pursuant to NCGS 143-318, period 11, Alpha 5, to establish or to instruct the public body staff or negotiating agents concerning the position to be taken by on or behalf of the public body in negotiating, number one, the price and other material terms of a contract or proposed contract for the acquisition of real property by purchase, option, exchange, or lease, or two, the amount of compensation and other material terms of an employment contract or proposed employment contract, and NCGS 143-318, period 11, Alpha 6, to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, conditions of appointment, or conditions of initial public employment of an independent public officer, employee, or prospective public officer or employee, or to hear or investigate a complaint, charge, or grievance by or against an individual public officer or employee.
It must be someone who wants to second that.
Second.
Thank
All
you.
those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're going to a closed session. Why don't we take about 60 seconds here to